So again, today we'll be talking about how to become a successful or competitive applicant for a graduate school. And you'll be hearing from several people today. So myself, my name is Dr. Lyerly, and I'm a lecturer in the department and also the undergraduate coordinator. You'll hear from Dr. Levens, who's a professor and also the director of the psychology honors program or the honors thesis program. So she'll be talking a lot more about that. And you'll hear from Will, who's our psychology advisor for all of our psychology majors. And then we have James, who is our administrative support specialist.
All right, so thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about how to become a successful applicant for graduate school. So we're going to go over a couple different things, but we've kind of broke them up into a few different categories. So first, we're going to talk about department opportunities, particularly how to get involved in research. We'll talk about what you can do at the university level, particularly with the Career Center. If you're interested in any pre-health advising, such as like medical school or OT or things like that, what you can do with student organizations. We'll also highlight skills, how to get them, how to highlight them, and different things you can work on there. And then finally, we'll talk about references, how to kind of build towards getting references. So the first thing, obviously, is taking psychology classes is going to get you further along towards your career, particularly, for example, if you wanted to do a master's program in social psychology, you obviously want to take intro to social psychology. And then you also want to take some kind of ancillary classes that'll kind of build towards that. So for example, you may want to take like social and personality development or the seminar in social psych. So you want to try and build on those classes after you've taken the intro. And they don't necessarily always have to be psychology classes. So for example, for social psych, a lot of times we have a lot of majors who are also doing either a sociology major or minor. So those are some good classes to pull in some more psych knowledge there and just kind of building towards that, whatever your graduate school goals are. Next, particularly within psychology, we've got the experiential classes. So that includes 3405, which is the practicum, 3806, which is research assistant, 3807, which is peer advising, and 3808, which is the teaching assistant. So for 3405 practicum, that's essentially an internship in psychology. So the way that works is if you're interested in that class, you can reach out to Dr. Richard McNulty. He's the professor in charge of that class. He can kind of go over it more in detail about what exactly you'll be doing and things. But in general, you'll apply for that class the semester before you're planning to take it. Once you've been accepted, you'll work with Dr. McNulty and he will place you into one of the different places that he works with regularly. And then you'll kind of go out to that work site and you'll be doing volunteering, essentially hours there, working with them. And then there's also a class component where you'll come back and kind of talk among the class what you're doing, reflecting on that, and kind of working towards making that a really good and beneficial experience. So the next one is research assistant. If you've been in either of our other ones, we've kind of talked about what that is, but that'll be kind of vary depending on where exactly the professor you're working with is in on their research projects. So for example, depending on what it is, you may be doing things like working on literature reviews and working on starting a survey or study. You may be conducting a survey with the professor and kind of administering it, collecting the data. You may be analyzing the data. You may be going towards the end. It just kind of depends on where they are. Normally, most of the professors will want you to have taken at least some of the research methods classes and then kind of reach out to them. And then if it's a good fit and they need somebody, you'll work with them on whatever projects they're working on. The next one, peer advising. That class is going to do a lot of different things and be kind of broad. So you'll be trained on the psychology curriculum and kind of working with other undergrads to help them kind of get introduced into psychology. Normally, you'll be working with students who are interested in changing their major to psychology or freshmen or somebody who's kind of less involved with the department at that level. You'll also be working with social media outreach and different things, as well as just trying to work on communication and outreach and kind of student development with other undergrads. And then finally, the last experiential class is the teaching assistant, which is 3808. So for this class, a lot what you think about, because you'll probably have TAs in your classes, is essentially after you've taken a class, you can reach out to that professor, and if they do need help when they're teaching it again the next semester, and they may have you doing different things like holding SI sessions where you're kind of working with students. You may hold office hours. You may be helping with administering tests or just kind of monitoring discussion boards, helping grade things. It kind of depends on what that professor wants. And then another departmental opportunity is going to be the senior seminar. So this is a good way to show that you're to prepare for a graduate class, because senior seminars are built to be very similar to the way a grad class works. So they will be very discussion based. It'll be a lot of work, but it's definitely beneficial if you're thinking about wanting to go to grad school. And depending on the semester, we have different ones depending on different interest levels. So some common ones we'll have are developmental, community, social, and things like that. And then since Dr. Levens is here, we'll have her talk a little bit about honors thesis.
Hi, everybody. So I am the program director for honors. I will try to speak about it sort of briefly in line with our sort of the level of description for the other experiential sort of department opportunities as well. Just wanted to basically spell out that honors is a 2-semester sequence. So it is 4701 and 4702. 4702 counts as your senior capstone. So the honors sequence can satisfy your senior capstone. The honors sequence also links you with the university honors. So you'll have those opportunities and privileges that are associated with that, early registration and select courses, access to travel and research funds, and you would also have access to additional advising, I believe. The other pieces that are really critical for honors, I think sort of one of the main pieces, is that to be admitted, you need to have, at this point, a faculty mentor. So honors is the current way we have honors conceptualized is basically a very sort of independent research experience, but it builds on oftentimes 3806 in the sense that you're able to work closely with a faculty mentor to develop a research study, research questions, answer hypotheses. And if you graduate with honors, this is and complete really an honors thesis, this is looked upon very favorably for graduate school preparation, specifically graduate school in line with research-oriented master's and doctoral programs. We are working on adjusting our honors vision to also provide practicum and sort of community-based honors associate opportunities. And that might be available to the freshmen who are attending, maybe sophomores if you're going to be any super seniors, but that's something that will be coming up in the next couple of years. So right now, honors is research focused. It's characterized by the opportunity to develop a really close mentorship relationship with a faculty member. If you are interested in honors, I recommend trying to form connections or links with faculty so that you can basically have access to that opportunity, because they do need to say, yes, I'm willing to have you work on this. So this would mean if you're in online classes, take special steps to reach out to faculty. If you are in 3806 with the faculty and doing research assistantship, that's usually a really great leg into getting honors. If you have any questions about honors aside from this, then I'm happy to chat anytime and to help you figure out if it's right for you.
All right, thank you so much for talking about that, Sarah. So finally, the last department opportunity, which you can do within the department or at the university as a whole, is study abroad. So pre-COVID, normally about once or twice every year, we would have as a department a study abroad kind of set up, normally led by 1 or 2 faculty members, kind of depending on how it goes. Some common ones we've gone to before are, we normally have a UK one that we would go to almost every year, as well as one that kind of rotated among different South American countries, as well as kind of other opportunities as they arise. And those are within the department normally. So always be on the lookout, especially for you freshmen and sophomores, as kind of hopefully we get over the COVID and everything and can start studying abroad again. If that is something you're interested in, that's always going to look good and be very favorable, kind of that international approach. And finally, if you want more information about some of these opportunities, you can visit our YouTube page. We are just UNC Charlotte Psychological Science Department. So finally, we also want to highlight research, because regardless if you're going into planning to go into a research heavy grad program or not, it's always going to look good. So if you're a psych major, one of the best things you can obviously do is just kind of finish out your research methods classes and your capstone, trying to do your research methods classes obviously as soon as possible so that you can kind of get to those other opportunities. For your capstone, you're going to want to try and focus on that senior seminar because that's going to be the most rigorous and, like we said before, the closest to a actual graduate class, unless you plan to do an honors thesis. If you're not a psychology major or you're a psychology minor, look into your own major departments to see if there's any research classes you can take there, as well as there are some that are open for the university as a whole, regardless of major. Again, try and do that research assistantship. And once you've actually done some research, and depending on how it is, you could work on attending conferences, presenting at conferences, publishing research, co-authoring with professors. There's a lot of journals that are specific to undergraduate research that you can do. UNC Charlotte also hosts its own undergraduate research conference, but you can apply for that, and it's kind of similar to a kind of national conference, but it's going to be specific for UNC Charlotte. There's also some other ones throughout North Carolina, and kind of going to those will just help show that you are ready and prepared to enter a graduate program.
We want to highlight the Career Center's website because there's a lot of great information on that website. All the things we have listed here are available there. Career coaching, you can do mock interviews there. They even have a clothing closet to where if you're having a hard time getting together some professional attire, there's people on campus that can help you solve that issue. You can get professional headshots made. They can work with you on an elevator pitch, which is just, if you have 30 seconds to sell yourself, how are you going to do that? And how are you going to be effective in doing that? They have tons of workshops and events. I'm on their website right now, and they have a scroll that goes across the bottom of the page, and they have dozens and dozens and dozens of opportunities just in the next few weeks. Career meetups, graduate school prep, set design, and and a lot of these are specific, but if you find things that are specific to something you're interested in, then you should definitely check those out. The Career Center is also something that you're always going to have access to as an active student or an alumni. So it's something to take advantage of. You could go on their website right now and schedule an appointment to meet with someone for career coaching. I think career coaching is the main thing that a lot of people will go there to set up an appointment, or you can do like a virtual drop-in. I think they actually have opened now for in person. So they're located next to the library. And we can, address any questions we have about that at the end of the presentation. Also, this is where you would go for internship conversations as well. They have the Career Center and Hire a Niner work, together. It's kind of just the job or internship portal for the school. And there are a lot of opportunities on there. And you might have to click through 10 menus and set up a profile. But once you do that, all of your information will be in there and you can apply to things as they become available. Their banner right now says Summer Internship Scholarship, where students can receive up to $1,800 in funding if they have an unpaid internship. That's great. Those are great opportunities. And there's a way to get internship credit for them, where we had discussed previously the practicum. If you can find something on your own, an internship, because the only internship that James, myself, Jordan will essentially pitch you in the department will be the practicum. The practicum with Dr. McNulty is the only internship that we offer as a department. But if you can find an internship on your own, say you're wanting to do pre-med and you're potentially going into psychiatry and you have someone you can shadow, and it's a lot of times it's always like, well, I have a family friend or I have an aunt or something that works in the industry and she can let me shadow with her. You may be able to get an internship approved for credit based on their criteria on their website. And again, this is through the Career Center. We had a student just this past year, I think they interned with the Charlotte Hornets, because I think one of the things that they're wanting to go into is kinesiology as well as sports psychology. The other thing that they have there are the UPIP internships, and those are simply listed in the Hire a Niner portal, which you should all have access to. And they're broken down. They're, specific to what they are. All the information's there on the Hire a Niner page. Like it says here, 10 to 15 hours a week, faculty and administrators serve as your mentor, and it's $10 an hour. So if you have questions specific to that, follow up with the Career Center. If anybody's interested in pre-health and you came through our SOAR sessions, we would have discussed pre-health with you. Pre-health advising and pre-health work at the university essentially gives you a list of prerequisites that you would want to hit if you wanted to go into medicine, PT or OT, which are two of the more popular ones here in the department. And there's a specific, it's a good thing to reach out to those things early, because there's certain classes you can't take without specific prereqs, and there's certain classes you won't be able to take at all unless you're a double major with bio or taking a chem minor or something like that. So it's good to talk through those things early. There are other resources. Dr. Haney is available once you are able to essentially meet with her, and there are criteria to meet with her. It just requires a few prerequisite courses and a specific GPA. They have the pre-health advising offers other things too. They have orientation, they have events that you can go to, and a lot of that is through the Honors College.
All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about student organization. So you've heard about lots of ways to get kind of involved and different experiences to kind of work on. So another one of those are student organizations. So student organizations are a great way to help you build skills that are going to be really useful for graduate school. So things like communication, critical thinking, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of those skills in a moment. We have two student organizations within the psychology department. We have Psych-Chi, which is our Psychology Honors Society, and we have what we call PSC, which is the Psychology Student Coalition. So Psych-Chi, since it is an honors society, it is not just anyone can join. So basically every semester, if you meet the criteria, again, it involves that you be a psychology major or minor, and there are GPA requirements as well, that you would get an invitation to join this organization. And Psych-Chi, so kind of what you would do in this organization, you would, of course, get more information about the field of psychology and have different resources and, meetings. You might hear different people speak about, relevant topics. Psych-Chi, they also are involved in the community. So some examples of more recent ways that they've been involved in the community has been through like a local trash pickup. So kind of walking along the road and picking up trash. They've also done some work with homeless, so helping to feed the homeless. And they also have social events. So I'm sure those are not going as strong right now with COVID, but in the past, and hopefully, maybe starting next year, those can resume. For the Psychology Student Coalition, this organization is open to any student or any undergraduate student at UNCC. So you don't have to be a psychology major or minor. It's just open to any student who is interested in the field of psychology. And there are no GPA requirements or anything like that for this organization. And once again, they meet, I believe it's twice a month, and they typically will bring in different speakers. So for example, one week they may have someone come in and talk about research that's being done currently in the psychology department. They may have someone come in and talk about, internship opportunities. And PSC also has opportunities to get involved in the community and social events as well. So you can find more information about both of those on our psychology department webpage. And also don't forget about, there are, of course, many, many other student organizations on campus. So those could be service-based organizations, those could be pre-professional clubs, and you can just go on the UNCC website and find kind of that full list of organizations. So again, definitely take a look at these. It's a great way to kind of get involved and get connected and to help build skills as you think about graduate school. All right, so talk a little bit more about those skills. So there are many more skills that are useful for graduate school, but these are some that kind of come to mind and will be particularly important. So, and you can you can read through these and you can see how, of course, as you move through your coursework, hopefully you're going to be working on further developing these skills, but you could also see how lots of the opportunities that we've talked about today, so whether that is, for example, the research assistantship or teaching assistantship or getting involved in, a student organization, all of these things, right, will help allow you to develop these skills. So when we think about communication, think about both written and oral communication. That's very, very important in graduate school, as you'll be, especially with psychology graduate programs are typically going to be, you'll be writing a lot of papers, particularly research papers. Most classes are set up in a way that are very discussion based. And so you'll be expected to do the readings for the week and come to class prepared to actively participate in discussion. So again, it's really, really important to develop those both oral and written communication or oral communication skills. And we think about, so analytical and critical thinking skills, again, you could pick up these skills through things like practicum, internship, research assistantship. So all these opportunities really help you to further develop these skills. And the final two, so leadership. Again, there are lots of ways that you can be a leader, right? But one of those, if we think back to the student organizations, if you are involved in those organizations, you could even look into taking on a leadership role. So, being the president or the secretary for the student organizations. And of course, we've talked a lot about research, and that will be a theme that if you've tuned into previous sessions this week, or if you tune into some more upcoming sessions, you're going to hear a lot about research, right? And how important that research experience is. So if you're able to get involved in a research lab and or that honors thesis program, that's going to be really, really great in helping you to get more experience with research, understand the process, and all those things are going to be really useful as you move into graduate school, which typically those programs are going to have at least some, if not a very heavy research component to them. And the last thing we'll talk about today are references. Whenever you apply to graduate school, you will of course have to list or have people to write recommendation letters for you. And typically they'll ask you for 3. So you'll need to have 3 people who can write a good reference for you. And think about, how do you go about, finding a good person to write a letter, right? So I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is that you want these to be people who can speak to you, on a more developed level. So we don't want it to be like, oh, okay, I had this person in my class, they made an A, right? So as you're applying to graduate school, the expectation is that you've done well in your courses. So you want to select faculty who can speak to you, not only that, hey, this was someone who was a good student in my class, but can also speak to you on a broader kind of level and, talk about other experiences that you may have had working with them. Making those connections, so reaching out kind of to faculty as you're taking classes can really help to open up opportunities later on for working as a research assistant in their lab. And as Dr. Levens talked about, that can also open up opportunities for a mentor for the honors thesis program. You can also think about other individuals, so faculty, and I would say with those recommendation letters, you would want probably to have at least 2 of those people be faculty members, but there may be other people who, can speak to you, sort of as a well-rounded person. So that could be perhaps an advisor. It could be if you've had, a job, an internship, a practicum, having your supervisor write a recommendation letter for you can be also really valuable because they can speak to, again, your sort of professional skills and those applied experiences that you've had. All right, so that kind of ends our content for today. So we'll just open it up now if you all have any questions for us.
So we have a question from Ella. Are those classes for peer advising and teaching assistantship only for psychology majors or minors?
At least, so I've of course had teaching assistants. I do not necessarily require that they're psychology majors or minors. It depends on the class. So for example, a research methods class is only for psychology majors. So I wouldn't have someone who's not a psychology major TA for that class, but I've probably had TAs before in my brain and behavior class, which often we have students from sort of lots of different backgrounds who have ended up being TA. So I don't think there's a clear set rule for that, but Jameson, I'll let you guys add if there's anything else that you want to add to that question.
Yeah, so normally for TA, it can kind of come from anyone. So it doesn't matter major, minor, it's just really if a professor, you did well in their class and they want to work with you, they'll kind of either reach out, or when you reach out, they'll say yes. So that's fine. When it comes to the peer advising, that tends to only be psychology majors just because they will be working with curriculum and stuff, talking to other psychology majors. So it just makes sense for that one to be major only. In terms of RA, that one tends to be mostly majors, but it doesn't have to be. If you have somebody, if you are in a major that has research methods classes and you've taken those, and you've taken a couple classes with somebody and reach out to them and you have similar interests and they need somebody in their research lab, it's definitely possible that they may be willing to work with you even if you are outside of psych.
I can add briefly to that because I've had many research assistants. I will take majors and minors, so that it's really a lot of intrinsic interest, and I do a lot of interdisciplinary work, and so but I have lots of students in particular that are biology major psychology minors, pre-health, double majors in psychology, and so that's definitely fairly open with regards. Just a quick point with regards to teaching assistants. Every now and then I'll get requests from students to just say, hey, I'd be happy to be a TA for you. Most of the time, professors really do select that on a course by course basis, and we tend to recruit from within our courses, or other faculty will reach out to us and say, hey, I'm teaching this and I haven't taught it in a while. You've covered it recently. Did you have any good students? So one thing that you can do if you are interested and you enjoyed a class and did well is to just let the instructor know that if you're teaching this the next time, I really enjoyed it, I'd be happy to teach for you. Or if there's if the faculty that are sort of coming up. So that's just one piece if you kind of want to put yourself out there more, because if I had students do that, I would totally select them. I don't have it too often, but it shows that they're really interested, which is great.
And I'll add to that a little bit to what you just said. So yeah, in terms of like reaching out, and also if you're thinking this is something that you could be interested in, then as you move throughout that course, and again, assuming that you're doing well, but don't even wait until the end of the semester, right? So even throughout the semester, you can reach out and just make it clear that you're really interested and curious about the content that you're covering. And even when you're just sending emails, always being professional and not just like, hey, be professional in your emails, and that always makes a really good impression. So I'll share, for example, last semester I had a student in my general psychology class. There's 300 students in the course. So obviously, and it was online. So obviously I don't, get to know the students, but I had one student in the class who reached out a few times throughout the semester, and I wouldn't say I personally got to know her really well, but I could certainly tell through my interactions with her that she was very interested in learning, and of course she was doing well in the course. She was always, very polite when she communicated with me. And so because of that, at the end of the semester, I reached out to her about if she wanted to TA this semester. And so again, had she not reached out to me, then I wouldn't, I wouldn't have reached out to her. So keep that in mind too. If you're interested in being a teaching assistantship, be sort of strategic about how you are communicating with your faculty member throughout the semester.
And just in case there's similar questions for being a research assistant, because that sometimes we will recruit from courses. Sometimes we'll post something out there in terms of saying, hey, I have open positions. Every now and then that will come through sort of the psych department sort of listserv, but most of the time it's students that reach out to me and see if I have positions open in my lab, and because they are looking for research opportunities, they enjoyed my class, they heard about research that I do that aligns with their interests. And so those whenever someone emails me, I sort of reply back, and I keep those emails even if if I'm not recruiting at that moment. And then when I am, I'll go ahead and reach back out. So it's helpful to if you want to be involved in research, it might take a little bit of advanced, just sort of, it might happen a little bit later. So don't wait. We get requests all the time. It's like, look, in my final semester, I'd like to be involved. Most faculty actually require a year because it gives you sort of the fuller experience, and then you get through the training, and then you get to apply your training. So if you're interested in research, reach out to faculty when you're a freshman or a sophomore. I've had people start working with me as freshmen and sophomores, and then imagine the letter that I can write when I've worked with people for 3+ years. And then we get close, we stay in touch afterwards, so there's opportunities for real mentorship with faculty. And we look for students who are looking for those more in-depth experiences.
We have another question from Ella. Is being a research assistant the same as getting into a research lab?
Great question. Yes, that is the same thing. So being a research assistant is the same thing. It's also what I mean when we're saying getting into a research lab. So same thing. Yeah.
If it is.
Yeah, and for most faculty, they will not accept kind of volunteer people into their labs who are kind of in the lab and not earning credit. It's very rare that people want to do that just because there's when you're earning it for credit, it's kind of like a job. You're kind of, there's some kind of actual like thing you're trying to earn by being in the lab. With a volunteer, you have no really kind of way to kind of keep them in line. Obviously, we hope that everyone's going to be doing well anyways, but you don't really have that kind of way to cover yourself. So that's why most people will only take it if you're doing it for the class.
And I'll add on that a little bit, because especially if it starts that way. So if I have people that start working in my lab as sophomores, they can't take credit every single semester. So I'll usually offer volunteer opportunities after they've, after sort of that sort of first year. And then, but sometimes I'll say, look, there's 6 credits of RA credits that you can apply towards your major. You can spread those 6 credits out however you want. So you can do 3 and 3, or you can do 2, 2, 2. I've had people do 2, 1, 2, 1. Yeah. So, and that, and so when so that's an option for you. And then in terms of volunteer, like James correctly said, that's usually not sort of offered off the bat. And even I have the same contract that I have research assistants sign, whether they are working for credit or for volunteer. And we are required to have a contract for credit. So that's not just me. We submit those to the department, and it basically protects you as, like, and has a record of like what you're going to be doing for your credit. So, and I have the exact same one at the top. So I have all the same sort of expectations and hourly commitments, regardless of whether they are volunteer or research.
Another question from Ella. I am a biology major, and I have found a few professors in the biology department who do research. I read their websites, and they left their emails for students to contact them if they are interested in joining their lab. How do I approach emailing them since I have never took classes with them and I'm only a freshman?
So Ella, one thing that you could do, and things may be different in the biology department, so I don't want to speak too strongly about this in terms of their department, but you can, at this point, you could still reach out and just say, hey, I've taken a look at your research interests, or I've read through your recent publication on XYZ. It's a topic that I'm really interested in, and maybe ask them some questions about, right now I'm a freshman, but would it be possible to get involved in your research lab in the future, and maybe ask about what their process is like for you to get involved in their lab in the future. So you could still do that even if you haven't taken a class with them yet. That would be one way that you can at least, approach them and just sort of see what those options might be moving forward.
Yeah, and I would also say, so I'm actually a former student from our psychology program, and I did a RA with somebody that I never took a class with. So the way I did it was, one of the faculty members that I had made connections with, I was talking to them and I was like, hey, I'd be interested in doing some research with somebody. Here's kind of some general things I'd like to do. So if you do make connections with somebody in the department, normally they'll know a little bit. They may not know everything that the other people in their department are researching, but they can get you in the right directions, and then they will be a strong kind of like recommendation for you to get into somebody else's lab. And that's how I got into a research lab with somebody that I'd seen around and talked to a couple of times, but I hadn't really like had a class with them or anything meaningful. I just knew somebody that knew their research a little bit within the department and was able to get in that way.
Cold emails are fine. It's like, hey, I looked up, this looks good, I'm interested in here. The one thing, sometimes faculty web pages are not updated in terms of the research descriptions. So we're working on that, and I think I need to update my own, but that's just the one piece to also to keep in mind. But then you can ask them, like, you can look up stuff that they have coming up in terms of research articles too, to give you a hint.
All right, and that will conclude today's session. Thank you all so much for attending. We hope to see you at some of our other sessions. Have a good night.